The shimmering floors of Regal Motors sparkled in the late afternoon sun, showcasing a stunning array of luxury vehicles. Among them, a sleek silver Bentley Continental GT caught the eye of Evelyn Carter, a poised black woman dressed in an elegant navy pantsuit. She entered with confidence, her heels clicking softly against the polished floors. Evelyn had built a reputation as a sharp business strategist and the CEO of a thriving investment firm. Behind the counter stood James Whitman, the dealership's smug owner, engaged in a lively conversation with a colleague. Spotting Evelyn, he let his gaze linger disapprovingly before continuing his conversation. The other customers, a mix of affluent white men in tailored suits, stole glances at her, their expressions teetering between curiosity and dismissal. Evelyn approached the Bentley and ran her hand along its hood. "Excuse me," she called out firmly. "I'd like some information about this model." James turned, offering a perfunctory glance. His voice carried an edge of mockery. "That car? It might be a little out of your league. We have some pre-owned models across town. Perhaps you'd like to start there." Evelyn's composure never faltered. "I'm aware of its specifications, but I'd like to discuss its customization options." James chuckled dismissively. "Ma'am, this car costs more than most people earn in 5 years. Let's not waste each other's time." The room grew quieter as other customers began paying attention. Evelyn didn't flinch. Instead, she stood taller and replied, "I assure you, Mr. Whitman, the only one wasting time here is you." Annoyed, James stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. "We maintain a certain standard here at Regal Motors. I suggest you leave before we escalate this." "Let me speak to your manager," Evelyn responded coolly. "I am the owner," James sneered, "and I'm calling security." 2 guards appeared and escorted Evelyn out as James's laughter echoed behind her. "Know your place," he shouted as the glass doors closed behind her. Evelyn walked away with her head high, her expression unreadable, already formulating her next move. Evelyn's 30-year-old son, Michael Carter, sat across from her later that evening, his sharp navy suit accentuating his commanding presence. A partner at a top law firm specializing in corporate and civil rights law, Michael listened intently as his mother recounted her experience. "He didn't see me as a person, Michael. To him, I was just someone who didn't belong," Evelyn said, her voice steady yet tinged with resolve. Michael's jaw tightened. "He'll learn who you are soon enough. Let's make sure it's unforgettable." Together, they devised a meticulous plan. Evelyn, known for her discretion, chose not to disclose her status as the CEO of Carter Financial Group, a firm managing billions in assets. Instead, she allowed James's arrogance to blind him further. The next morning, Evelyn and Michael reviewed witness statements gathered by Michael's legal team. Meanwhile, Evelyn contacted a network of influential clients and media professionals. "This isn't just about me," Evelyn said. "It's about everyone who's been dismissed, humiliated, or silenced." As they worked, memories of Evelyn's journey flooded back. She had built her firm from scratch, raising Michael as a single mother after her husband's passing. The values she instilled in him, resilience, integrity, and the pursuit of justice, shaped the man he had become. "Mom," Michael said, breaking her reverie, "this won't just be a lesson for Whitman. It'll be a wake-up call for an entire system." Michael's eyes were filled with determination, and Evelyn couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. She had faced obstacles her entire life, from being the only woman in boardrooms to overcoming countless attempts to undermine her authority. And now, she would ensure that the next generation, represented by her son, would take the fight even further. Evelyn leaned forward, her voice softening. "We can't let this become just another forgotten incident, Michael. We need to show them that actions have consequences, that respect is not optional." Michael nodded. "I've already reached out to my contacts. There's a good chance we can get the attention of some significant media outlets. They're going to want to hear this story." Evelyn smiled knowingly. "Good. Let's make sure the world knows what happens when arrogance meets justice." Over the next few days, Evelyn and Michael worked tirelessly. Michael's law firm had a reputation for being ruthless, especially when it came to matters of civil rights, and his team left no stone unturned. They gathered testimonies from other customers at Regal Motors who had witnessed James Whitman's behavior. The stories were consistent. James had a history of treating customers who didn't fit his narrow view of wealth and privilege with disdain. Evelyn, meanwhile, was busy reaching out to her powerful network. She spoke with CEOs, community leaders, and even a few well-known journalists. She framed the story not just as a personal slight, but as part of a larger problem, a systemic issue that needed addressing. It was a story that resonated with many, and soon, the whispers began to grow louder. One evening, as Evelyn and Michael sat in her study, reviewing their progress, Michael looked up and said, "You know, Mom, this is more than just a fight for us. It's for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong. We're standing up for them too." Evelyn reached over and squeezed her son's hand. "That's exactly why we're doing this, Michael. It's not just about me. It's about changing the way people think, the way they treat others." By the end of the week, everything was in place. They had the witness statements, the media attention, and the legal strategy. It was time to move forward, and neither Evelyn nor Michael had any intention of backing down. Evelyn looked at her son, her eyes filled with pride and determination. "Let's show them what real power looks like, Michael. It's time." Michael smiled, a fierce resolve in his eyes. "It's time." A week later, Michael arrived at Regal Motors unannounced, his imposing frame and tailored suit commanding attention. The showroom was bustling with activity, but his presence instantly shifted the atmosphere. James Whitman looked up from his conversation with a client, his trademark smirk plastered across his face. "Mr. Carter, is it? What can I do for you today?" James asked, the condescension in his voice unmistakable. Michael extended his hand, his eyes cold and unwavering. "I believe you met my mother recently, Evelyn Carter." The color drained from James's face, his smugness faltering. Before he could respond, Michael placed a stack of legal documents on the desk between them. "These are notices of legal action against Regal Motors for racial discrimination, false imprisonment, and defamation." James's face turned ashen, his bravado crumbling. This must be a misunderstanding," he stammered, struggling to regain his composure. Michael's tone remained calm yet unyielding. "The misunderstanding is yours, Mr. Whitman. My team has gathered statements from witnesses and compiled evidence of your discriminatory practices." His words were measured, each one landing with the force of a sledgehammer. James fumbled for words, but Michael continued, "What's more, my mother now holds a controlling interest in your parent company, Imperial Automotives." The realization hit James like a tidal wave, his eyes widening in shock. "She owns Imperial?" "Indeed," Michael replied. "And as of this morning, you're no longer the owner of Regal Motors. The board has decided to remove you, effective immediately." James's bravado collapsed entirely. "Please, Mr. Carter, let's discuss this," he pleaded, his voice barely a whisper. "There's nothing to discuss," Michael interrupted, his gaze unwavering. "The board will ensure new policies are implemented to prevent this kind of behavior in the future. Discrimination will not be tolerated at Regal Motors, or anywhere else under our watch." Michael turned to leave, but paused at the door. He looked back at James, whose shoulders were now slumped, his earlier arrogance replaced by a sense of impending doom. "Oh, and my mother decided to purchase 2 Bentleys from your competitor," Michael added, his voice laced with satisfaction. The door closed behind Michael, leaving James alone, his mind reeling from the series of blows he had just received. The opulent showroom around him, which once represented his success, now felt cold and unfamiliar, a testament to his undoing. Michael walked out of Regal Motors with a sense of accomplishment. This wasn't just about his mother. It was about standing up against a deeply rooted injustice. As he stepped outside, the sun shone brightly, and he felt the weight of what had just transpired. A victory not only for his mother, but for everyone who had ever been treated unfairly. Michael made his way to his car, his phone buzzing with messages. He saw a text from Evelyn. "How did it go?" He smiled and replied, "Just as planned. Whitman is out, and they're implementing the new policies." He paused, then added, "I'll see you tonight. Let's celebrate." As he drove away, Michael thought about the larger implications of what they had accomplished. This wasn't just about taking down one arrogant man. It was about setting a precedent, about making it clear that discrimination had no place in any business, no matter how exclusive. He knew the road ahead was still long, but today was a step in the right direction. Later that evening, Evelyn waited in her penthouse, the city lights twinkling below. She had spent the day speaking with journalists and key figures, ensuring that the story would reach a wide audience. This was a story that needed to be told, one that would inspire others to stand up, to speak out, and to demand the respect they deserved. When Michael arrived, Evelyn greeted him with a warm smile. "You did well, Michael. I knew you would." Michael hugged his mother, the weight of the day finally lifting. "It's not over, Mom, but it's a start." Evelyn nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "It's more than a start. It's a statement." They sat down to dinner, the atmosphere filled with a sense of triumph. The past week had been a whirlwind of emotions: anger, determination, hope, and now, finally, a sense of justice served. As they ate, they talked about their next steps. The foundation Evelyn was starting to support victims of discrimination, the changes they would push for within Imperial Automotives, and the broader movement they hoped to inspire. "We can't let this end here," Evelyn said, her voice steady. "There are so many others who need someone to stand up for them, who need to know they're not alone." Michael nodded. "And we will. This is just the beginning." The next morning, the news broke. Headlines across major outlets detailed the events at Regal Motors, the legal action, and Evelyn Carter's new role within Imperial Automotives. The public response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from people sharing their own experiences of discrimination, thanking Evelyn and Michael for standing up. Evelyn watched the coverage, her heart swelling with both pride and a sense of purpose. She knew this was more than just a personal victory. It was a call to action, rallying cry for those who had been silenced for too long. As she sat in her office, looking out at the city skyline, Evelyn felt a renewed sense of hope. Change was possible. It was difficult, and it required courage, but it was possible. And she would not stop until every door was open, every barrier removed, and every person treated with the dignity they deserved. She picked up her phone and dialed Michael. When he answered, she said, "Let's get to work. We have a lot more to do." Michael's voice was steady on the other end. "I'm ready, Mom. Let's make it happen." And with that, they moved forward, a mother and son, united in their mission to bring about lasting change. The reckoning had begun, and they would see it through to the end. News of Evelyn's experience at Regal Motors made headlines, sparking widespread discussions about racial profiling in luxury industries. Evelyn used the attention to launch the Carter Foundation, aimed at providing legal and financial assistance to victims of discrimination. "We must turn indignities into opportunities for change," Evelyn said at the foundation's inaugural event. Her voice was strong, her eyes resolute as she spoke to the crowd gathered before her. "This isn't just my fight, it's everyone's fight. It's for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong." The applause that followed filled the room with an energy of hope and determination. Evelyn's story had resonated deeply with many. The attention brought to light countless similar experiences, and the public demand for change was undeniable. Regal Motors underwent a complete transformation in response. Diversity and inclusion training became mandatory, hiring practices were overhauled to create a more diverse workforce, and a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination was enforced. Former employees came forward with stories of James Whitman's toxic leadership, and these testimonies spurred further reform within the company. The new management team was committed to righting the wrongs of the past. They invited Evelyn to be part of the advisory board, hoping to benefit from her insight and experience. Evelyn accepted, but not for personal gain. She did it to ensure that real, lasting change was implemented, not just at Regal Motors, but as a model for the entire industry. Driving her new Bentley, Evelyn often passed by Regal Motors. The sight no longer stirred anger in her. Instead, it evoked a quiet satisfaction. She had faced humiliation in that very building, but she had turned that moment into a movement for equality. Regal Motors was no longer just a dealership. It had become a symbol of transformation, of how even the most entrenched systems could change when challenged by the right people. Evelyn reflected on the journey that had brought her here. It wasn't easy. It had required resilience, courage, and a refusal to accept anything less than what she deserved. She had faced down arrogance and prejudice, not just for herself, but for her son, for those who came before her, and for those who would come after. The Carter Foundation quickly gained traction. It offered legal support to victims of racial discrimination in consumer settings and provided grants to small businesses led by people of color. Evelyn's mission was to create opportunities where once there were barriers, to replace exclusion with empowerment. The foundation's efforts began to attract partnerships from other prominent figures in business and entertainment, amplifying its reach and impact. One afternoon, as Evelyn sat in her office reviewing grant applications, she received a message from Michael. Turn on the news. She did, and saw a story about a young woman who had successfully taken legal action against a luxury retailer with support from the Carter Foundation. The young woman, her voice steady, spoke about how she had felt powerless until she saw Evelyn's story. Mrs. Carter showed me that I didn't have to accept being treated as less than, the woman said, her eyes shining with gratitude. She inspired me to stand up, and now I hope my story will inspire others too. Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. This was why she had fought. This was the legacy she wanted to leave. Not just for Michael, but for everyone who needed to know that they had power, that they had worth. She picked up her phone and called Michael. You saw it? She asked, her voice thick with emotion. I did, Michael replied. We're making a difference, Mom. One step at a time. Evelyn smiled, her heart swelling with both pride and a renewed sense of purpose. Yes, we are. And we're just getting started. The foundation of justice and legacy was built not on grand gestures, but on the quiet, unwavering determination to create a better world. Evelyn knew that her fight was far from over, but she was ready. Ready to keep pushing, to keep building, to keep inspiring. For herself, for Michael, and for everyone who believed in the power of change. One Sunday evening, Evelyn and Michael sat on her terrace overlooking the city skyline. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink, the perfect backdrop for a quiet moment of reflection. A gentle breeze carried the scent of the city, and the lights began to twinkle below, casting a serene atmosphere over the terrace. You've done well, Michael, Evelyn said, her voice filled with pride. She looked at her son, the light of the setting sun highlighting the determination etched on his face. This victory isn't just ours. It's for every person who's been told they don't belong. Michael nodded thoughtfully, his gaze fixed on the horizon. You taught me to fight for what's right, Mom. This is just the beginning. We've made a difference, but there's still so much more to do. Evelyn smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She knew he was right. This was only the first step in a much larger journey. But they had made a statement, a powerful one, and it had sparked a change that couldn't be ignored. Their conversation shifted naturally to their next steps. They spoke of expanding the Carter Foundation's reach, of ways to help more people and create systemic change in industries where discrimination had too long been the norm. Evelyn's vision of a more inclusive society was no longer a distant dream. It was something real, something within reach, and together, they were making it happen. As they clinked their glasses in a toast to justice, Evelyn's smile widened. She took a deep breath, letting the moment sink in. True power, she said, echoing words she had spoken many times before, is about lifting others up, not tearing them down. Michael raised his glass higher. To lifting others up, he echoed, his voice resolute. The sky grew darker, and the first stars appeared, shimmering softly against the deep blue canvas. Evelyn looked at her son, her heart swelling with love and pride. He was everything she had hoped he would be, strong, compassionate, driven by a sense of justice. Together, they had faced down a man who had sought to diminish her worth, and together, they had shown him and the world what true power looked like. You know, Evelyn said softly, her gaze returning to the cityscape, there were times when I wondered if it was worth it. All the sacrifices, the battles. But now, looking at what we've done, I know it was. Michael reached over and took her hand, squeezing it gently. It's always worth it, Mom, because it's not just for us. It's for everyone who comes after us. We're building something that will last. Evelyn nodded, her heart full. And we're just getting started. They sat there together, the city lights sparkling below, a silent testament to the resilience and hope that guided them. The fight was far from over, but Evelyn knew they were ready for whatever came next. With Michael by her side, and the Carter Foundation growing in strength, the future was bright. A future filled with hope, equality, and the unwavering pursuit of justice.